Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many of you join us for another amazing distributed SQL customer conversation. My name is Michael Haig. I'm the head of product marketing at Yugabyte. Now, we've already had a chance to hear from a number of amazing enterprises today on how they are embracing database modernization as a critical phase to their overall digital transformation journey. Now, in this conversation right now, I'm honored to be joined by Ahmed Patel, a leader in the Comcast database and digital platform team. Welcome, Ahmed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome, and thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our talk.
Now, for anyone not familiar with Comcast Corporation, they're a Fortune 100 company and one of the largest American telecommunication conglomerates. They have well-known names like Xfinity, Xfinity Mobile, NBC, Telemundo, Universal Pictures, streaming service Peacock, and one of my favorites, Universal Parks and Resorts, and more. So needless to say, they have numerous business units and initiatives with all of them focused on managing and distributing data around the world. Now, Amit, before I jump into all the questions I'm eager to ask, can you first introduce yourself a bit more, talk about the team you lead, and the role you play with Comcast?
Sure. Hello, all. Myself, Amitkumar Patel. I am principal architect at Comcast, and where I've been a part of various teams from 12 plus years and been a part of numerous digital transformations and new technologies. My team focuses on delivering core database platform services across our organizations to various developer teams. We are focusing on existing core solutions as well as looking ahead at new technologies so that we can continue to provide the best technology and offering to our developer teams to help drive business outcomes and ultimately our end customer value. Database is a huge part of our charter. We had our hands on just about every database out there. And I'm the part of the key member of Database Center of Excellence initiative program, which we run. So that's what like all around myself.
And this is kind of just a quick aside question on that then. I mean, I know you have your hands on a lot of stuff. So as a team, your job is to help kind of identify technology solutions and provide them out to all the different teams within Comcast, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And we'll definitely dig into that more as we go, because I want to kind of peel that back. But maybe let's start and pull this back a little bit at the higher level. So without a doubt, over your time at Comcast and before, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of technology changes and innovations over the years. We know technology is always changing, but it feels like in the past few years that just keeps accelerating even more, even though I said the same thing 5 years ago. But if we just look back at these past 5 years, with your role at Comcast, I mean, you've had to deal with this head on as part of a massive organization. So within your role, how has your team at Comcast responded to these digital trends? And maybe which ones have had some of the biggest impact on you, your team, and just your overall customers?
No, you're right. Technology is always changing. And one of our charter within Comcast is to help track these trends, identify how we can use them to benefit our customers and offer more valuable services. Given our size and breadth of services we offer, we use pretty much everything out there. And you said like changes perspective, I would say like cloud and infrastructure changes when it comes to deploying, maintaining, and offer services. We have seen huge benefit from leveraging on-prem solution with the ability of leveraging cloud services. Another, I would say, containerized solutions like Kubernetes. Our biggest stakeholders are our dev teams, and how they build, deploy app is very different today than it was as you're talking about 5 or 10 years back, right? When we talk about this later, sure, but it does put pressure on new underlying infrastructure to match the agility and scale of the containerizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely will dig into, I'm going to dig into the developer side a little bit later, but just talking about them and thinking about your applications. We heard a little bit earlier today in our DSS keynote by Karthik. One of the key messages he discussed was this increase in the variety and unpredictability of workloads and just all the changes we're seeing in these types of workloads, the different variances by size and time and everything. Do you agree with that? Have you seen that? And how have you seen those workloads and apps, kind of the differences in them change over time?
Yes, I think that's very true. Software is driving the world, and every services we provide relies on more and more applications. With microservices, seeing more diversity in apps, then also need to balance with that with existing applications that may have like more kind of classic and monothetical architecture. But it's nowadays more demanding. Velocity change, like pace of the new application increasing, expectation from developers is that we can deploy instantly and everything should just work, right? But with reliability and security in place. I would say data is also key, from many critical applications that data needs to be secure and consistent, regardless of the where apps or users are reside. So customer need data, accurate data, right? So higher expectation from developer or company, I would say consistent data as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a theme we've heard from a lot is just the rising expectations, both internally, both with customers and how do you respond. And we've been spoiled by how we operate on the consumer side, where we can just click a button, get a new app on our phone, and it just works. But there's someone in the background that has to make all that happen. So that's great. And let's maybe then kind of narrow in the conversation. And I know, I mean, you deal with databases on a daily, hourly, minute basis in your role. So thinking through kind of that database journey you've been on, I mean, maybe just kind of set some context for everybody out there. Like, what are some of the examples of the databases you use? Kind of how have you approached kind of what's been that database journey for you over the past few years?
No, that's as far as our database landscape goes, we have supported classic RDBMS solutions for years, like Oracle, MySQL, MS SQL, and those. We are early adopter of like NoSQL, so solution like MongoDB or just you name it. In the end, I would say like no one size fit all solutions, right? They all have their own benefits and trade-offs. But as we look to the future and demand of modern workloads, where we are looking to the data should be distributed and it should be near to the customers or near to the apps, and accelerating our adoption on distributed SQL, looking around that part.
Perfect. So you kind of have gone through this progression where I think right now you're at a stage where you're looking kind of distributed SQL to be that new emerging product to kind of help, again, not replace, but complement and continue to build. So as you think about that database journey, I mean, again, as I know we were talking before, you talked about all the different changes that you've gone through and just this natural progression that most of our customers, I mean, everybody's going out there is facing. What are some of those challenges, those issues with the existing, with the legacy solutions that kind of kept driving this change and kind of the next phase of databases?
So the evolution of database has aligned with the change in the rest of our IT stack, right? So from infrastructure to applications, a lot of it comes from the variety of use cases nowadays we support. For example, like not all applications require multi-data center or geo-distributed data or synchronous replication, because that does add an additional complexity of operation cost with current legacy architectures. But we still have many requirements to meet high demand of data with consistent reads. So that's what problem I would say, if for example, legacy database solution which run on a multi-data center, maybe one on East Coast, one on a West Coast. And when we can only write on one side, if we want to real active, we need to set up, maintain pretty complex replications. And then we have to make sure app teams are building logic into the code to aware of that handle conflicts. So to address those kind of demanding applications, like number of challenges already mentioned, one is the application lag. Like prerequisites here is that application has to be architected to handle the downside of unavailability of committed data in active passive side, like another side, or immediate read perspective, or like in active configurations, you need to account your potentially conflict handling. That is what maintain about. Another, I would say, a unified view of cluster, which is the key thing here, because that's not available. You need to have separate maintain two set of cluster per data centers. You need to manually do additional style to monitor and maintain and all those things. So that's what the key things I would say, looking forward for DSS perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you think through maybe some of those challenges, every time we adopt a new technology, we fix something and then identify ways we want it to get even better. So as you look ahead, as you're evaluating new technologies, as you're looking at again, you already have a large portfolio of databases. You're not necessarily wanting to pull in yet another database, but there are compelling reasons why it makes sense to adopt new technology. What are kind of those elements of databases that are top of mind for you right now and important both to you internally at Comcast and to your customers?
So I would say this will vary between application, but as I think about those key characteristics, right, these are the important, like while we are talking about transactional application, key transactional applications, some specific requirements are common normally, like, scalability, consistency, resiliency, cloud native architecture, administration optimizations, and must, like, kind of good thing is having the kind of SQL support kind of things, like default for most current legacy application logic, which we don't want to, like, retrain or restart to write another code. So that's the things. And last but not least is the security, with enterprise like critical database always like should provide the capability of, I would say, authentication, authorization, accountability. So that should be a part of building as well. So this kind of like characteristics we are looking when we are adopting, like, new technology perspective.
Yeah. Well, and a great list, and one that we see again, the scalability comes up again and again with customers. It's one of the big drivers for distributed SQL when people just are tired of that vertical scaling. Security, we've talked a lot about, is key. But you mentioned consistency, and for those anybody out there that's kind of just getting their head around distributed SQL or newer to this journey, that's definitely one that comes up again, is the ability to again take the benefits of SQL with that consistency, but pair that with the scale, the resiliency that people are used to with NoSQL. I assume is that one kind of one of the big drivers, and kind of how have you balanced that need for consistent data and the scale and resiliency of modern apps?
So in a cloud-based world with distributed systems, right, and microservices are the default architecture, like transactional consistency become difficult. And I would say not all apps require strongly consistent. Every app is different. But for those that need strongly consistent read, and the data is across, like, to be distributed across your, like, geographical locations, we need definitely both scale and resiliency along with the strongly consistent data. That is what we are looking for. And that's the reason we are adopting DSS.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's, again, just to what kind of our team is building, what kind of this pushment for distributed, being able to finally combine those two is to be an exciting kind of a major change, game changer in kind of the database, and excited to see where that goes. What another thing we spent time talking about today, and I just want to kind of pick your brain on this while we're kind of talking about database characteristics, is around open source, and kind of what that means. I mean, lately there's been a lot of interesting articles written about this different open source models, and it's no longer black or white. There's a lot of kind of gray area in the middle of partial open source, or eventually open sourcing features. Just curious, from your standpoint, as you're evaluating options and again, kind of arming the larger teams there with solutions, what role does open source play in your IT strategy? Where does it come kind of as a priority standpoint as you're evaluating offerings?
No, as a team, we have been big fans of open source solutions. And like any new technology, right, we spend time understanding the trade-offs and exploring the pros and cons. And as you mentioned, right, it's something like open source and partial open source. So not everything included in open source. So in general, we incorporate a lot of open source solution into our environment. We do use the like containerized solution open source in Kubernetes. We use the community version of databases. I would say benefits and drivers of open source is the flexibility and ability to deliver scale, consistency, and resiliency, along with the security. That's what we are looking, and that's what we are going.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Now then, kind of taking that, we talked about this journey, those features of the database. Let's talk a little bit about distributed SQL. So again, we're here at DSS. So I want to start to pick your brain on how you've approached that within. So we heard a little bit again about that journey, those compelling reasons for why you're starting to look at it. But talk me through a little bit of kind of what are those things about distributed SQL that really stood out that made you kind of start down this journey, and then just a little bit of a level check. I mean, where are you on that journey? We've talked to customers at all different stages, years into it, just getting started. How do you view the Comcast journey right now?
So I think we actually have been on this journey for the past couple of years. And we have looked and adopted few different solutions. Shifting to new solution isn't something we do lightly. So we really look for those compelling reasons that provide not just a little help, but really provide significant benefit to our teams and customers. For distributed SQL, primary benefit really stood out. It actually, like I would say, fault tolerance. So it's a resilience against failure with native failover repair, linear scalability, ability to scale writes on demand through auto sharding or rebalancing, geo distributions like lower user latency through geographic data distributions. And fourth thing I would say, like existing skill set, which is kind of SQL, which is the language of data and default for all application logic. Existing apps are written in SQL and use advanced features like stored procedures. We want to able to move those apps and modernize without huge headache. So with right solution, I would say like Yugabyte, we also get the benefit of minimizing the impact on dev teams while enjoying all those new benefits of the distributed SQLs.
And expanding on that thought a little bit, I mean, during the migration of applications, again, it's kind of this slow movement as we modernize apps and either refactor them, replatform them, do a lot of changes to them. How have you approached it? Are you taking a refactor approach or a replatform approach? Has there been a normal process there on how you shift applications, embrace some of these newer technologies, microservices, and distributed SQL?
So we do both, I guess I would say, refactoring and replatform. It depends on the apps, like what kind of workloads we are thinking about. But recently we have few workloads which running on active on legacy database. And as mentioned above, right, what challenging we have, like maintaining two set of database cluster, manually do additional step to app release and monitoring and unified win all those. So we are able to do the actually refactoring and able to move the apps to use the distributed SQLs. We also able to migrate as a replatform perspective from one database platform to another database platform with like actually minimal changes and rewrites. So yes, and both are running in good in production. So we are able to adapt that both things.
Very nice. And kind of talking about kind of that process and looking ahead and adopting apps, another thing that's been top of mind and very curious to get your perspective from, again, a huge enterprise that has a large IT team that can provide services on its own. Where does database as a service, DBaaS, fit into your strategy? Are you embracing that? Are you looking to replicate it internally? Kind of what's your approach on just kind of X as a service in general?
No, you are spot on. So database as a service, our key strategy when it comes to database. Yeah, we are looking as a more platform services where developer does not have to worry about the infrastructure or database maintenance or operational work, right? Like as a DBaaS, they should get the connections when they need it on database and just work on development part. Behind the scene, need to have like patch consistency, vulnerability fix, day 2+ operation like backup, monitoring. All those tasks will be offload to the specific work, not development team, right? So we do build DBaaS services internally for our larger Comcast developer team. We do provide like RDBMS DBaaS like Oracle, MySQL, and we also have like NoSQL, Mongo DBaaS. Again, we want to evolve another distributed SQL and cloud native services as well. That's what our goal is.
Nice. And you brought up the developer, so let me maybe kind of pivot in, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit with you because I know that's been an area we've talked about in the past. They're clearly a huge stakeholder. Again, as you said, software runs the world. The developers are key to that and having more and more of an influence on our IT decisions and what we're doing. And given kind of all the solutions that you provide and the choices that you give to these developers, can you talk a little about how you're helping developers find the right database for their applications? And what are some of the key things folks should consider when navigating this crowded database landscape with lots of choices?
No, you're like absolutely right. Like given the size of our organizations, I would say like automation is our best friend. We talk about this increase in apps, the need of move to fast, so many DB technology, as you said, crowded DB landscape. And I already mentioned like we do support many DB technology, right? So one major step we took was to provide a database selector tool to all of our internal teams. How does that work? Like basically user provide key information and then we help make recommendation from our engine. Like even though in other landscape, what basic categories you can consider, right? Type of consistency, scalability, vertical versus horizontal, replication requirement, what you had like requirement of active, passive, multi data center deployment, what kind of security features you are looking for, and backup monitoring options, as well as the key thing is all those features we talk about open source, right? Does it part of open source community, or you're looking the enterprise backed solution kind of things? So at the end, we provide recommendation, not just one but provide choices with the details on cost and then how strong of a fit one versus another kind of thing. So we do provide top three assigned and graded from 0 to 100 scale, and user can pick from there. That's what we are helping our team to find the good database selection in crowded community.
Yeah, and my understanding is that, again, you're not dictating, you're not kind of forcing developers to use something. Again, you're attracting talent that brings in skills and they have preferences. But you're essentially empowering them to have those choices correct and just helping them, guide them on that a little bit faster, which makes a lot of sense. And thinking through that interaction, then again, I mean, from kind of the ops team and the developers, how has that relationship changed? Again, I mean, you've been kind of at Comcast for 12 years. We weren't talking DevOps 12 years ago, or at least not many people were. But it's the top of mind for everyone, and it's DevOps, DevSecOps, Dev Data SecOps, depending on who you talk to. There's more and more going in there. But how have you seen it change, and what are your thoughts on kind of how that's evolved?
No, good questions. And there has been definitely been an evolution of that relationship over the years, as I think both sides realize they need to work together and have better understanding of others. So developers are more aware, as you said, as a DevOps or DevSecOps, right? They know how to deploy their apps in a containerized solutions. Before it was running in silos and on VMs. They are looking to now deploy similar containerized database solutions. More developers are more aware of DB technology because they can just go to cloud or they can Google and they can run the basic vanilla configuration using Helm chart or some other configuration. But what hasn't changed, I would say, as a developer, they don't want to do the day 2+ kind of operations like scaling, backup, monitoring, performance requirement, meet the alerting and issues like L1 kind of alerts, right? Space alert or this down and open kind of alerts. They don't want to deal with they can run the basic vanilla installation, but I'm talking about optimal configuration. Optimal configuration is the key, right? Because that's something that comes with how this core technology architecture, how it works. You can talk it about any DB technology. You need to understand that part. Then only you can do the optimal configurations. And same thing, they don't still they don't want to handle the security part. Again, in an infrastructure perspective, where vulnerabilities are related to DB or infrastructure. Yes, if the developer should own the vulnerability on their developing code perspective. So that's what I would say, relationship as of now. I am saying from my side.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that's a common thing we hear is how do you get the developers, again, simplifying their code, focusing on code that adds value, isn't, again, addressing these challenges that again, it's easier to maintain, easier to write, keeps the developers happy because they get to provide value as opposed to fixing issues at the data layer, which is never the most exciting thing to do. So we talked a lot about technology. Maybe shifting a little bit then. I mean, a lot of people say, technology is one part of the equation, but the other part, again, is how do you move a large organization into adopting this new technology? It's one thing to kind of figure out the technical pieces of how it integrates into your systems, how you kind of operationalize it from a functional standpoint, but getting those teams to understand it and start using it is another thing. So as you've gone through that journey, what kind of advice, what kind of learnings do you have in helping enable people, orgs, teams to use new technology?
No, I agree that any change is more than just implementing the technology. You need to establish best practices, handling the ongoing support, maintenance of it, and then making sure other stakeholders within the company are aware of new solutions and why they are implemented. It's not a stake of implementation, right? You need to make sure it's socialized. While doing that, I would say we touched base earlier, what you are doing with your adopting distributed SQL. Either you're doing replatform or you're doing refactoring. And when we think about those changes, I would say put in a main 3 categories. So one is the fit assessment. I mean, when you look your qualify apps or data set needs, does it really need the distributed SQL? what I'm trying to achieve. Like I'm looking for the resiliency for distributed database. I'm looking for the geo distributions or scalability, those kind of things. Or maybe I'm doing the modernize my applications to use the cloud scale and resiliency, So that's the one part. Second part is migration assessment. Like, do not start your migration before you do assessment. Like, define scope and complexity, what it looks like. Once you've done both assessment, identifying your fit assessment and migration assessment, third part is the executions. And I would say like call it migration executions. So you need to deploy, convert, optimize, testing out, run the final testing we call as a like wargaming, resiliency wargaming, and conclude like what it looks like with your security requirement. Does it fit or like how it works? So this is what like normal optimal process we follow, and I think that's something helping out us, and that's what like I can advise. Like if you're looking for to divert on this side, this is the way you can should follow as well.
Awesome. And I'm just looking at time here because I could keep digging into some of these, but maybe let me just throw out one final question just to kind of help us wrap up. And as you think through kind of going back to the distributed SQL journey and kind of all the things we've talked about, what's next on your plate? What are you looking for? Do you kind of look ahead of what distributed SQL will help you do as a company and help benefit your customers in the end? What are you looking forward to? What are you excited about next?
I would say like maybe two fronts that I can think about. One is which I already like touched base earlier, like DBAS, database as service, which is our key strategy. We already have a few DBAS which we talk about, right? But we are looking to create the containerized based services which can run anywhere. So right now created on a self-managed infra-based DBAS, but in future we want to make the databases run on a Kubernetes services perspective. Another one I would say like another front is the platform migrator. So when we are adopting the DS, distributed SQL, right, we need to think about how app teams coming and looking to migrate from one platform to another platform. So we already created guideline, which is called the migration analyzer, which does provide dev and developer management team to know like how hard it is, like what it does take to categorize like how easy or hard to migrate, which one require little or lots of changes. So we want to create like help the tools. Right now it's just analyzer, but we want to create kind of, migrator tools which can help team to adopt distributed SQL. So that's what like I would say like DBAS and those kind of tools we are looking to adopt in our next journey.
Awesome. That's great, Ahmed. And again, these insights have been phenomenal. With that, I think we're kind of out of time here. So thank you again, Ahmed, for joining us at DSS this year, sharing all of these experiences you've had with distributed SQL, with Yugabyte DB. I know these insights have been helpful to all those watching who are kind of starting down this journey as well.
No, thank you and your team for hosting this distributed SQL summit, and where we can meet other industry leaders and learn and adopt new technology as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahmed, and to everyone out there, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you at the next DSS session.